Just 1 hour ago, Leonardo DiCaprio admitted his involvement in Diddy's trial. Could he have played a deeper role? Earlier today, Leonardo DiCaprio, often seen as one of Hollywood's most respected actors, walked into a federal courtroom, not to act, but to reveal a truth that could forever change how we see the world of fame.
In a shocking confession, DiCaprio swore under oath that he once went to one of Sean Diddy Combs' secret parties, events that prosecutors now claim were part of a much larger pattern of manipulation, control, and hidden abuse wrapped in luxury. But his attendance brings more questions than answers. Because if DiCaprio really saw what he says he did, people are wondering, was he just watching? Or was he somehow involved?
He said he got the invite like many others. Private jet, hidden location. No reporters, no interviews. When he arrived, it wasn't a home. It felt more like a fortress. Guards were everywhere. Phones were taken away. Guests were kept apart from their teams and guided through selected hallways. Inside, everything glowed. Fancy lights, champagne, expensive clothes. But beneath the shiny surface, something felt off. DiCaprio told the court it all seemed staged. Beautiful, but empty, like being on a movie set. He said he knew within the first hour that this wasn't a normal party. Then came the moment that changed everything.
He said he was walking around the estate alone when he came to a hallway that looked less perfect than the rest. At the end was a slightly open door. Inside was a dim room, a chair, a camera, and Diddy himself giving directions. It wasn't chaos, DiCaprio said. It was structured, deliberate, and being filmed. He said he saw people standing in silence, waiting their turn. One girl, maybe 20, sat by herself in a red velvet chair, surrounded by older men. They made eye contact. She looked terrified, he said. Really terrified. But he didn't leave. Not right away. When he tried to leave early, someone told him his driver was delayed. A man in a black suit showed up and said he'd take him to a private lounge. They said it like it was a favor, DiCaprio said, but it felt like a trap. The room had glass walls, no phone signal, and soft music playing non-stop.
He waited there for more than an hour before they let him go. As he walked out, he caught Diddy's eye from across the hallway. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't fear. It was like Diddy was studying him, like he was storing away that memory. In the days after, DiCaprio stayed quiet. Not from guilt, he said, but from fear. Something shifted after that night, he told the court. The phone calls stopped. Film offers disappeared. People he'd known for years started looking at him like he was toxic. He later called it being marked. Not publicly, but within Hollywood. Still, he didn't speak up, not to his agent, his publicist, or even his close friends. Years went by. The bad dreams didn't stop. But it wasn't until lawsuits started coming out and survivors began sharing their stories that DiCaprio realized staying silent wasn't an option anymore. When the prosecutors asked why he hadn't said anything sooner, his answer was chilling.
Because I didn't think anyone would believe me. And maybe I didn't want them to. The courtroom grew silent as DiCaprio spoke about what's now known as the Lighthouse. A nickname shared among Hollywood insiders. But this lighthouse wasn't a safe place. It was a place for watching and controlling people. They called it the lighthouse, he said, because once you've seen inside, you can't unsee it, and you're never the same. He admitted being there. He admitted staying longer than he should have. And he admitted he kept what he saw a secret for years. Now the world has to ask, did Leonardo DiCaprio just witness something too hard to face? Or did his silence help keep it going? This story is still developing. And with every new piece of testimony, every fresh detail, DiCaprio is no longer just a witness. He's becoming a key part of a much bigger story. One that's now reaching far beyond just one courtroom.
Because if what he says is true, it points to more than abuse. It shows a world where silence was forced through fear, power, and closeness to fame. And if that world could trap someone as famous as Leonardo DiCaprio, how far did it really reach? Weeks after the party, DiCaprio said he got a phone call. It was from a number he couldn't trace. A voice on the other end said, "You saw more than you should have. Let it go, Leo." Then the line went dead. That was the first warning that what he saw that night wasn't supposed to come to light. He never spoke of it. But he started watching more closely. He paid attention to how people from that night acted around him, how they avoided him, then came back as if they were keeping tabs. He listened to victims as they came forward, describing scenes and rituals that matched what he had seen. One woman's story hit him hard.
She remained anonymous in court, but sent a message to DiCaprio through someone else. He called her Hope. She said she was brought into Diddy's world by people in the industry and kept there for nearly 3 months. She described secret codes, security routines, and rooms with mirrored walls. And she remembered Leonardo. "You saw me," her message said. "You looked, and then you left. I don't blame you, but I need you to say what happened." Even if nobody believes it, those words stuck with him. So much so, he said, they made him start collecting evidence. He saved texts, screenshots, and even building layouts. He wrote down things people told him in quiet whispers, at award shows, private parties, and fancy dinners. He didn't go to the police. He didn't go to reporters. He waited. And when the court finally gave him a chance, when the trial opened a door he thought would never exist, he walked through it, evidence in hand.
In court, prosecutors revealed a sealed envelope. Inside was what they called DiCaprio's personal collection of evidence. There were guest lists, security notes, photos of underage guests, and emails between staff and powerful executives. Some names were blacked out, others weren't. DiCaprio didn't read the names aloud, but under oath, he confirmed that everything he had seen matched what the papers described. This wasn't just gossip, he said. It was a system. But what shocked the courtroom most wasn't just what DiCaprio saw. It was what others had told him later. He remembered a conversation with another actor, someone who had also gone to one of those lighthouse gatherings. That actor looked scared, shaken, and told him something chilling. "There's a list," the man said. "A real one. Everyone who's been recorded or used. It's traded like money. If you follow the rules, you're safe. If you speak up, you disappear." And it wasn't just actors and
DiCaprio said that over the years, he noticed certain directors, producers, even publicists acting strangely. They all seemed too close to Diddy's world in ways that didn't make sense. At first, he thought it was just business politics. But then he saw the same people at every secret event, every closed-door meeting, every odd conversation at a big party. People who had no reason to be there, suddenly moving like they were all part of the same plan. Prosecutors then asked him if he had ever tried to expose what he knew before this. DiCaprio's answer was quick and emotional. He talked about meetings with studio bosses where he tried to quietly raise concerns. One meeting ended with a producer looking him straight in the eye and saying, "You want to be in The Revenant or not?" Another told him that if he spoke about certain people, he could become uninsurable overnight. "You won't know who ruined your career," they told him, "but you'll feel it."
This kind of pressure wasn't just about his job. DiCaprio also said he was followed, got strange encrypted messages, and even had to hire a private security team to check his home for hidden cameras. "Maybe it sounds like paranoia," he said in court, "but in Hollywood, that's just called staying alive." Then came a turning point. Capri 2021. DiCaprio, now feeling more alone than ever, went to a party. There, he overheard someone say a phrase he hadn't heard in years. "The lighthouse," they whispered. "It's back." Those words hit him hard. That night, he stepped out onto the deck of a yacht by himself and stared into the water. He said in that moment, he thought about jumping, not because he felt guilty, but because he felt hopeless. "I thought I'd failed her," he said, referring to Hope. "I thought my silence made me part of it." He didn't jump, but he made himself a promise. If this ever came out, he wouldn't hide. And now he wasn't hiding.
As the courtroom listened to his last words of the day, DiCaprio wasn't just an actor or a whistleblower anymore.
Instead, he admitted a moral failure, one that in his view cost others far more than it cost him. But it wasn't just guilt he talked about. It was fear. Fear of power. Fear of an industry that punishes truth tellers and protects the powerful. He described how, in the weeks after the party, he started to notice what he called the inner circle choreography. It was subtle, almost invisible. He'd walk into a meeting and see a familiar face, not from a film set, but from that night. A producer, a financier, a stylist. They all acted in sync, never said too much, never brought up the past. It goes like we'd all signed a contract, he said, but no one ever held a pen. And when he stopped following the unspoken rules, when he said no to events or offers, people backed away quickly. Scripts disappeared. Deals fell through. His influence didn't fade in public, but it did behind the scenes. That's when fear became strategy.
He started keeping records, every strange message, every odd meeting, every uneasy look. He saved files offline. He printed out transcripts. He shared encrypted folders with a few people he trusted more than anyone. "I wasn't planning to speak out," he said. "I was planning to vanish if I had to." Then came a second woman's name, one not mentioned aloud in court, but proven by sealed records. She had vanished after being seen at one of Diddy's parties. No media coverage, no missing person report, no investigation. But DiCaprio remembered her. He saw her at the mansion. They shared a small joke. She smiled. Hours later, she was gone. No one ever spoke about her again. "I started wondering," he said, "how many others didn't make it out?" But it wasn't until 2019 that things really began to change. A young woman, an assistant to a music exec, approached him at a charity event. She was shaking as she handed him a file.
"If I disappear," she said, "give this to someone who can't be silenced." He asked, "Why me?" She answered, "Because you still have a soul." That file, according to prosecutors, had internal emails from Diddy's promotion company. It listed names, many underage, of people who had entered the mansion under fake names. It even had video clips from hidden cameras inside the property. DiCaprio never went public with the file. But in court, he said everything in it matched what others had told him over the years. One of those people was a tech expert hired to install encrypted video systems inside Diddy's house. That person, now under federal protection, told DiCaprio nothing was recorded for safety. It was recorded for power. At this point in the trial, everything shifted. It wasn't just about one man's crimes anymore. It was about the system behind him. The people who helped, the ones who stayed quiet. The ones who made sure the truth stayed hidden.
The prosecution began presenting evidence not only of abuse, but of a web of silence and protection that stretched across industries, news outlets, even politics. One moment stunned even the most experienced reporters. DiCaprio was asked directly, "Did you ever see Sean Combs with any political figures at these events?" He paused, then answered, "I never saw Obama at the mansion," he said carefully. "But I did see Diddy hand something to someone from his campaign circle." He said it was an envelope. It wasn't nothing. He made it clear. He didn't believe the former president was directly involved. But his point was obvious. In this story, no one was completely safe from suspicion. At a certain level, he said, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know enough to stay silent. The courtroom gasped. Once again, time seemed to stop. By now, Leonardo DiCaprio's image had completely changed. To some people, he was a hero, risking everything to finally speak up.
To others, he was part of the problem, a man who could have said something years ago but chose not to. But one thing was no longer in doubt. He was there. He saw it. And now the world had to decide what that meant. By the end of the third week of testimony, one thing was clear. This trial wasn't just about Sean Diddy Combs anymore. It was about everyone who stood beside him, everyone who benefited, everyone who stayed silent to stay close. And at the center of that storm stood Leonardo DiCaprio, not above suspicion, but deeply tangled in it. As news outlets shifted their focus from a single scandal to a larger system of protection in Hollywood, DiCaprio's choices were picked apart in real time. What did he know, and when? Could someone as powerful, as connected, and as smart as him really not know what was happening? Or did he always know, and only speak now because the pressure finally caught up? DiCaprio didn't back down.
During one of the most powerful parts of the trial, he was asked, "Why should the public trust you now, after staying silent for so long?" His response was raw and honest. "Because I believed what they made me believe," he said. "But I couldn't stop it, that I wasn't strong enough. And because I didn't realize until it was too late how many people paid the price for my comfort." He went on to talk about what he called the machinery of silence. It wasn't threats. It wasn't blackmail. It was pressure. Private screenings, exclusive meetings, big roles offered only if you played along. And if you didn't, the industry didn't attack you. It just erased you. No movie roles, no magazine covers, no drama. Just a slow fade into invisibility. "For someone like me," he said quietly, "that was the warning." But it wasn't just fear for his career that kept him quiet. DiCaprio admitted that over time, he began doubting his own memories.
The longer he kept silent, the easier it became to pretend none of it had happened. If you live in denial long enough, he said, it starts to feel like home. But that illusion broke when survivors started reaching out. Not to accuse him, but to remind him. One woman, named only as E in sealed court files, contacted him in 2022. She remembered him from the lighthouse. She described how he looked around the room, how he paused by a locked door, how he met her eyes, but said nothing. Her message was just 2 lines. "You were there, say it." Those words changed everything. After that, DiCaprio started acting differently. He got back in touch with a few industry people who had also stepped away from the scene. They had their own stories, their own regrets. Some had tried to report things in the past, only to be threatened, blacklisted, or completely erased. One director told him, "You think being famous protects you, but fame is what they use against you."
Your silence becomes part of your image. That idea echoed through DiCaprio's final days on the stand. He said fame gave him a voice, but also built a cage. "You don't want to lose it all," he said, "so you act like you didn't see anything. And by the time you're ready to speak the truth, you're already part of the lie." In a rare decision, the judge allowed the jury to hear secret audio recordings. These were captured during a surprise security test at the estate. The voices were fuzzy, but you could still hear them. Diddy giving orders, guests being told where to go, a young girl crying behind a locked door. DiCaprio stayed silent as the audio played. He looked down. He didn't speak. But after the court took a break, he walked up to the judge on his own. There was more. He wanted to talk about the list. According to DiCaprio, it was real. Not digital, not on a computer.
It was handwritten, passed from person to person only within the trusted circle. It was a book of secrets. Who had been recorded, what they'd done, how they could be used. He said the list explained why people who had no reason to be allies suddenly supported each other, why they showed up for each other's events, why they protected one another like chess pieces on a board, moved by an invisible player. You don't need blackmail, he said. All it takes is a memory. One blurry photo, one foggy night. That's enough to keep someone loyal. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. This wasn't just a wild theory anymore. It was a system, a network where silence had value, and guilt could be used as power. And Leonardo DiCaprio, by his own words, had been part of it, even if he didn't mean to be, even if he never wanted it. His voice stayed calm, but you could hear the urgency behind it.
"I'm not proud of what I didn't do," he said. "But I'm more scared of what happens if no one ever says anything." The room froze. Because no matter what anyone believed about Diddy, about the survivors, or about the dark side of Hollywood, one truth was now part of the record. Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't just someone looking in from the outside. He had been inside. And now he was finally speaking. Now, Leonardo DiCaprio stood outside the courtroom, not just a man who had testified, but a man changed by it. As the last few hours of his testimony wrapped up, the weight of everything he had said stayed behind, not just in that room, but across the entire country watching it happen live. This wasn't about Hollywood gossip anymore. This was about a system of silence, control, and unchecked power. And what happens when someone as high profile as DiCaprio dares to speak out? When asked for his final words, DiCaprio didn't give an apology. He didn't defend himself.
He offered the truth. "I'm not here because I hate Sean Combs," he said. "I'm here because I believe the lie, that someone like him was untouchable. I believed that lie for too long, and I lived comfortably inside that belief." He went on to describe a culture where staying silent meant staying safe, where questioning authority made you seem bitter or jealous. "You're trained to doubt yourself," he said, "to doubt the people who speak up, to care more about the party invite than your own conscience." But something had shifted, not just inside of him, but in the world around him. People were finally starting to believe survivors. Whispers were becoming movements. Hashtags were becoming headlines. And things that once sounded like rumors were now showing up as hard evidence in court. He looked over at the jury. "This case isn't about me," he said. "I'm not the victim. I'm not the villain. But I was there. And if I stay silent, that makes me something worse."
The prosecution rested their case, but the shockwaves of what had been said would keep spreading. In the days that followed, headlines exploded. Leonardo DiCaprio breaks his silence. Inside Diddy's House of Secrets. The list is real. Talk shows picked it apart. Podcasts analysed every word. Social media debated what it meant, not just for this trial, but for the entire industry. Some people praised DiCaprio as brave. Others said it was too little, too late. But no one ignored him, because his testimony forced the world to ask a brutal question. How many others saw something and said nothing? And how many more systems like this are still hiding just out of sight? More names began to surface, not from DiCaprio, but from the documents shown in court. Studio insiders, executives, PR experts, bodyguards, the people behind the curtain. One by one, their stories started to come out. Each one had the same pattern: glamour, access, silence, and secrecy.
Subpoenas were sent to companies that had never been questioned before. TV networks quietly removed old interviews. Brand deals froze. Album streams dropped. For the first time, the consequences weren't just hitting individuals. They were shaking entire institutions. As for DiCaprio, he vanished from the public eye. No interviews, no press tour, no red carpet appearance. Sources close to him said he returned home under tight security and refused all media requests. But he had already said what he needed to say, and whether history sees him as a coward, a hero, or just a flawed human, it can't erase the moment he chose to break his silence. When the gavel hit and the courtroom emptied out, one question hung in the air. What else don't we know? And more urgently, who else was there? This isn't the end of the story. But it is the end of pretending, because now the lighthouse isn't just a rumor anymore.
It's on the record, and the whole world is watching. And as the world watches, a new kind of silence begins. One not driven by fear, but by anticipation. People everywhere are now questioning everything. The interviews they once cheered, the award shows they celebrated, the red carpet smiles that suddenly feel hollow. What was real? What was rehearsed? And who among the faces they trusted knew more than they let on? DiCaprio's testimony didn't just lift a curtain. It cracked the foundation of an empire built on secrecy. What he exposed wasn't just a man's wrongdoing, but a blueprint. A system that thrived in the shadows, where silence was power and fame was a shield. And that system wasn't limited to one house or one party. It reached far beyond, to studios, agencies, media companies, even politics. With one voice under oath, DiCaprio turned a spotlight on a truth that many had whispered about, but few dared to name.